This is a video that was requested that we react to. I think people are requesting other leftist YouTubers react to it, so we'll do it. This is China Uncensored. It's just this guy who makes videos about China, apparently. I don't know why. But it's hard to tell if this is supposed to be serious or not, but to the extent that it is supposed to be taken seriously, we'll react to it.
Well, satire's dead anyway,
Yeah, right,
so
serious matter.
we'll just assume he's serious.
We live in a post-satire world.
Yeah.
Okay, alright, let's do
Thanks,
this.
Obama.
On this episode of China Uncensored, it's the 100-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. Let's have a party.
Yes.
A communist party.
Yes.
Leave your money at home, though.
I agree.
Also, your means of
No.
production. Really anything you want to keep.
The capitalists took my means of production.
Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. The relentless march of history carries on until it reaches its inevitable end with communism.
Yep.
Or democracy. I'm sure it's one of those. Or robot
Communism
domination.
is democracy.
Okay,
Random, yeah.
definitely one of
but
those three.
communism is
So,
democracy.
Communism, as we all know, has been a
Yeah, pause
smashing...
it for a second. Can you pause it for a second? Yeah. Here's a picture of the Terminator. He clearly doesn't realize that in the fully automated luxury gay-space communism thing, the Terminator represents automation. But I digress.
That's true.
Also,
success.
Skynet already exists. I mean, it doesn't exist to the extent of Terminator, but there is a U.S. military project called Skynet.
Oh, and before you unpause, according to his video that's showing a bunch of red that's showing countries that became communist, he left out Armenia, so I am offended by that.
Also,
And-
Cuba.
Yeah.
And Cuba, which is weird because Cuba is right next door to America, which
Oh,
this guy
yeah, what
obviously
the
seems
fuck?
to be.
Yeah.
I think he just destroyed his credibility in like
he
literally at
included-
41 seconds.
He
Also,
includes-
Catalonia.
yeah.
Also, Paris.
well,
Also,
I mean, yeah, he's not
the
gonna
EZLN
include those.
territories in Mexico.
Paris,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
it's not
add it honestly because it's just one city.
But no, that
Catal-
is weird that it includes
Also,
Somalia,
The Spartacist uprisings in Germany.
but not.
Also Rojava.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think he's just
okay,
using
wait about
ML
that.
stuff. He's just using ML stuff.
But yeah, it includes Somalia, but not Cuba or Armenia SSR. That's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. Like maybe this guy wants to write Armenia out of history,
And
finish what the
wait,
Pasha started.
Wait, what the fuck is this? It's South Vietnam, but not North Vietnam? No, that's Cambodia.
Wait,
So
what
Khmer
about
Rouge,
North
but
Korea?
not Vietnam. This
Yeah.
map makes no sense, and not Korea either.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
the Great People's Republic of Korea.
Khmer Rouge, but not Vietnam.
The
and
super
Laos.
duper great People's Republic of Korea.
Where the fuck did he get this map from? I
His
wasn't even
ass.
planning to
His
react to this,
editors.
but this map in itself is like, what the
Well, I mean, it's
What point
accurate
of
except
time-
for a few
It
things.
includes Afghanistan, so you would think it's like 1980, but that still doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just continue.
Okay.
Maybe not in any of these places, but at least in these places. Visit beautiful
Oh,
North
now he
Korea.
colors in Cuban.
You'll
Yeah.
never
Oh
leave.
yeah.
Seriously, you might not be allowed to leave.
You can leave.
So, communism. Communism.
Oh wait a minute, I think that map was former socialist countries.
Yeah, but if it was
Actually-
former socialist countries, then he should have included Armenia.
Yeah, that's true. You should have included Armenia.
Yeah,
smashing
if you
success.
forget
At least
Armenia,
if you're
you
talking about
lose
smashing
history forever.
Anyway, 2017 marks the 100-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution,
Yay.
Yes.
the
you already
first
said that.
communist uprising that didn't immediately fail. In fact,
Yeah.
it led to the creation of the Soviet Union, which took a full 70 years to fail. Nonetheless,
Oh, shots fired now. Took a whole 70 years to fail.
Getting
Well,
hot.
Took a whole 70 years before it was finally conquered in one way or another.
Yeah.
there are still
I mean,
some
it
who
didn't-
wonder whether
Wasn't Russia failed faster?
It also didn't even really fail. The people voted to preserve the Soviet Union, and then some capitalist powers said, nah.
Nah.
Yeah.
Pretty
Don't
much.
But hey, that's democracy, right?
Right. And in fact, right now, over 50% of the youth in Russia would vote to preserve the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
communism can rise like a phoenix from the ash heap of history.
Yep.
In looking back at communist history, this opinion article conveniently omits the death and destruction that happened under communism, while
Pause.
wondering
Oh,
whether it
boy.
can have a rebirth.
Pause. Friends. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the
You
New
know,
York Times omits all this deaths that happen
not like the
under
old
capitalism.
gulag
But
kind
yeah,
of communism,
Yeah.
pretty much.
but a
Implying
new,
that Stalin
cool
did anything
communism.
wrong.
I think that article came out the same week the New York Times style section featured the return
It should come back.
of the mullet. So in honor of the momentous 100-year anniversary of Russia's Bolshevik
Fuck. Who's touching it? Shit.
Revolution, let's take a look back at some of the things the New York Times opinion section so quickly glossed over, with a brief history of the Communist Party. Marx and the origins of communism. The ideas
Hey,
of communism
Volga
can be
Boatman,
traced
nice.
back a long time, but communism as we know it today began in 1848 with the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx and
It's
Friedrich
actually
Engels,
1847.
the original hipsters. Just look at those
Pause for a
beards.
second.
Karl Marx
Can you pause for a second?
Yeah.
It's actually funny. He said, "Look at those beards." He conveniently uses a picture of young Karl Marx who had no beard at the time, or at least a noticeable one.
That's weird.
Like, wow.
Holy! If that's an
editor must
accurate
suck.
sketch, though, he's a real looker.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently he might be the
history
reincarnation
from
of
the
one of the
perspective-
One Direction guys. That man's insane.
of a 19th century European man. Namely, he didn't like Mexicans, or black people,
What the fuck is
or
this?
Jews. Least woke
Press
hipster
pause.
ever.
Find me a person who did.
Yeah, it was 18. Like, I really hate using the current year argument, but like, for a lot of people, it's understandable that they hold views that were relevant to their time period. Even then, Marx was pretty much ahead of his time for most of the period. I mean, let's look at the American founding father Thomas Paine. I mean, he was still a capitalist, and he was probably like a whole Eurocentrist, but like he did manage to hold some advanced views on blacks and women for the time, despite being the 1700s. And no American seems to give him shit for that.
I
I
mean,
just find it
Washington,
funny
Washington
that
owned slaves.
Yeah, but like Washington was completely within his time. Like I'm talking about people like
Yeah.
who were thought to be ahead of their time, but
Oh,
they
okay,
still, of
yeah.
course, hold some remnants. Oh, like Paine and Marx were generally ahead of their time, but still hold some remnant ideas. Like Marx and Engels would obviously still be a little chauvinistic. Paine would be a pretty Eurocentric and a capitalist, but like it's not like, let's say, in the 1800s when you're looking at one of the European kings would be completely in line, or in the 1700s when you're looking at Washington. Those guys were were fully expected to be men of their time.
Yeah, it's just funny how this is supposed to be like a brief history, and that this is what he's portraying Marx as. Like, he totally made a revolution in philosophy and sociology. He changed the way how people think of history, the way how people think of one of the most significant events of Western civilization, the French Revolution. The way how we think of that as the bourgeoisie overthrowing the aristocracy. This all comes from Marx. He totally changed the way how a lot of people think about things. But apparently, the most important thing about him is that he said he called someone a nigger or a Jew or whatever the fuck he wrote. It's like saying
I mean, like as if people who are product of their times don't exist.
it's like saying Einstein was a scientist that had some ideas about scientists, but also he was really rude and he cussed at his mom and he was what the fuck? This
Yeah.
guy is not
True
even.
fact, Einstein.
It's kind of how I always say, like you gotta separate the art from the artist. Like, Mel Gibson does make great movies, even though, he's an anti-Semite and a homophobic, but that doesn't mean that despite the fact, that he makes bad movies.
This guy is not even pretending to try to be objective. He's just
Straight up propagandist.
Yeah. China.
Fun fact about Benjamin Franklin: he walked in the nude.
Anti-communist
He was pretty
did.
ahead of his in his house.
Call it
in his house, my
airbathing.
bad.
Airbathing.
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty ahead of his time.
Winston Churchill was the prime minister at some point, but also he was a nudist and drunk. And
And a
really hated
genocidal
Indians.
fuckhead.
And a genocide.
Yeah.
That's all we need to know about him.
Wait,
He
wait.
might have been prime minister
for the
during
people who
some
don't know,
war. I don't know.
for the people who don't know though, look up the Bengali famine of 1943.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, in the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels, this Marx
That's good.
and Engels, laid out
Gotcha,
their
Marx.
ideas for a heaven on earth where communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Abolishing morality? Great! Now we can all club baby seals.
Can you pause?
Marx
can't
just
we
wants to
club baby
replace
seals, right?
morality.
What Marx means by abolish morality is abolish the current ideas of morality. The current capitalist bourgeois
morality.
ideas of morality.
Replace the dominant superstructure with a different superstructure that upholds different ideals, obviously. But this guy's
A different sense of justice.
This guy's
Also,
basically making a religious argument that there's some kind of objective morality that we need to blindly uphold. So that
Also,
we don't club baby
Marx-
seals.
Yeah, Marx was a witty, sarcastic fuck as well, so
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff he said, especially in the Jewish question, is just complete sarcasm. He's making fun of the people who make those arguments.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah, every word. It's not like communists think that like every word he says is a gospel.
Yeah, that's mostly what they think. We think.
I mean, there are definitely good anarchist criticisms of Marx as well.
So far he said two things about Marx that are completely ridiculous and based on nothing but half truths.
Again. I mean, for the first time. I mean, no. The Paris Commune. Karl Marx thought it was only a matter of time before the workers of the world would unite. Tear down society and establish communism the world over. And obviously hoist him and his ideas up on a pedestal. An equal pedestal. But nothing happened for 23 years. The first uprising that even remotely resembled what Marx and Engels were talking about was the Paris Commune of 1871.
What does it mean by nothing happened?
Well, he means in between 1848 and 1871, I think.
That's a lay historical. I'm pretty sure.
Marxist.org describes it as the first successful workers' revolution. It lasted all of 10 weeks. Even
Yeah.
Firefly lasted longer than
Gee, I
that.
wonder why.
Crushed by the Prussian army. He just leaves out why it didn't last. Well, I guess they just sucked and they just forgot about human nature.
Pretty much. It's pretty much like what's happening on our place right now. We're trying to add a bunch of communist symbols to the pixel art canvas, and all the reactionaries are just like trying to remove it. And if they were to succeed, they'll probably blame us for failing in human nature and all that bullshit.
But in those 10 weeks, the communist insurrection was very productive. They killed tons of people, burned down a
Yeah, of course.
quarter of Paris,
No,
and destroyed countless
that was the
artistic
invading
treasure.
French army.
Yeah, people were killed on all sides, and like destroying palaces. Yeah, they did that in the French Revolution too. Does that mean republicanism is evil?
Much of the French army destroyed that upon going in.
Yeah, they killed each other. It was a civil war. They didn't want to admit it. Marx called it a civil war, and no one else wanted to call it. It was just a bunch of hooligans and rapscallions that dared to think that they could take over the means of production for a little while.
So at least the
And even then,
smoke covered up Paris's urine smell. And like Firefly, this brief season of communism gained a small cult following. The Soviet Union.
Hooray.
One of communism's early
we
fanboys
go.
was the guy who started communist Russia, Lenin.
Yeah.
This Lenin. Although Back in the USSR was a great song. In 1917,
yeah.
the Russian Tsar was overthrown in the February Revolution. Then,
Right.
8 months later, that government was overthrown by the Bolshevik Revolution, led by Lenin. This Lenin.
Pause for a
Lenin
second.
also began the Red
1.5
Terror.
million? It's like everybody dead in Russia.
Yeah, also
That's more than the
conveniently-
Russians who died in World War II. I mean, sorry, World War One, if I believe.
Yeah, conveniently ignores the White Terror also.
First of all, ignores the White Terror. Second of all, ignores the fact that the Russian Empire, upon becoming the Soviet Union, ceded a lot of land to become new countries and to other countries. So they just didn't count those populations anymore, and it looks like a
Oh,
big
yeah,
dip
that's
around the
true.
time of the White and Red Terror. So, yeah,
Yeah, because
just
It's
kind
anything
of
so
like
dumb.
looking at facts and looking at the
anything they
numbers and
can
not
use to cook the
realizing
books
what
to
they
make
mean.
inflate the body count, they do. That's kind of the Robert Conquest method of counting deaths.
Yeah.
Like in like for the Ukrainian famine, they count what is it? They count the projected birth rate deficit as deaths, even though those literally were people that never existed in the first place. That's how they get to 6 million or whatever the fuck number they
It's
spend.
not. It's 1.2.
Yeah, I know. They say like
Campaign
5.
of mass murder and
Yeah.
torture that killed up to 1.5 million people. What's that, Shelley? What do you mean I have to hurry up?
What's that? What do you
Yes,
mean
I
there
know
were
this
two
is a
sides to
brief
this?
Just make
history.
shit up.
Okay.
What do you mean there was a white terror?
Okay, so Lenin killed a bunch of people and stole their stuff. Then he died.
It stole it.
Then
Yeah,
Stalin took over.
reappropriated.
He invented the Gulag system of forced labor
Expropriated,
camps,
rather.
killed like 20 million people, and stole way
Okay,
more stuff.
Again, Stalin created the Gulag camps. Stalin himself was in the Tsarist prison labor camp, which was basically, I mean, it was the precursor to the Gulag. And sure enough, after the Soviet Union, they still have prison camps today. So what does it really mean when he says the communists invented the Gulags? Like,
I mean,
yeah,
the idea of a prison has been around for a while.
Yeah.
Like a long time, since like maybe even dawn of civilization.
So, I'm not sure. I mean, the conditions were shit. They probably
Also-
mistreated them. They shouldn't have done that. But other than that, I don't
You're
know.
just making shit up at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
Then he died. Then these guys ran the country for a while. Meanwhile, there was an
Hang on. What is this? Khrushchev, and then who else was in there?
Then he died. Then these guys ran.
Khrushchev, Brezhnev, these other guys. Who is that? The bad guy from Rocky and Bullwinkle?
Yeah,
That's
that's
exactly
him.
who he is. Yep.
the country for a while.
Oh, 'cause he's
Meanwhile, there
Russian,
was an
right?
arms race, a space race,
Yeah.
and the golden age of James Bond movies.
Yeah, good shit.
After World War II, the Soviets
Okay,
set
pause
up
again.
communist governments in satellite states.
Pause again.
Yeah.
Yeah, America also ended up being in a lot of satellite states as well. I mean, like
Yeah.
South Korea was pretty much an American puppet. Japan is an American puppet. They had to do a lot of dirty tricks to get them to obey. Like, I mean, a lot of American puppets in
South
Asia and then
Vietnam.
the Third World were pretty authoritarian.
In
To the same
And
extent, like,
fascists, pretty much too. They're
Yeah.
Noam Chomsky refers to them as sub-fascist states.
yeah, I mean, like,
Uh,
if we're gonna criticize the Eastern Bloc for being crypto-Stalinist, then like we have to criticize the American puppets in Europe and sorry, in Asia and Africa and Latin America for being crypto-fascist blocs as well. Although in Europe, even then, Spain and Portugal were pretty much crypto-fascist too. So, and they were practically allied with them. So yeah, it kind of goes both ways. The only reason why like Western Europe got off a little better is because they could be more easily bought since there's a lot of capitalist strongholds there already.
Also, if you want to see exactly what American influence has done into the Pacific island countries, look up the documentary called "The Act of Killing," and
Oh,
that's
yeah,
just about
Indonesia.
Indonesia.
Yeah, that was some hardcore white terror there.
Yeah.
States like Poland and East Germany. I see. No time for Poland. What about East Germany? Too bad. The Stasi did some really weird stuff. Okay, then the
so did the
Soviets helped
CIA.
start a bunch of Marxist-Leninist states in Eastern Europe, Africa, and the Borat parts of Asia.
Racist.
Anyway, eventually the guy with the thing on David Hasselhoff sang a song on the Berlin Wall, and the Soviet Union collapsed. And when the Soviet Union fell, so did the rest of the Soviet bloc, like Nirvana after Kurt Cobain. Moving on to Asia,
And we will be.
the People's Republic
Wait,
of
pause
China.
for a second. China was sitting out World War II because the Japanese were butchering them
Yeah.
by a lot.
They were having their own war.
Yeah. Not to mention the guys that the Americans would have backed, like Chiang Kai-shek would have probably been another crypto-fascist leader and probably would have had this, like, if Mao really did kill as many as was implied by capitalist historians, then I'm guessing Chiang Kai-shek would be the same.
You still don't have to be a Marxist to know that.
Yeah, I know, but like ideology and stuff.
After sitting out most of World War II, the Chinese Communist Party under Mao Zedong was in a prime position to liberate the war-ravaged country from the ruling Nationalist Party. Mao set out to prove how good of a communist he was by killing way more people than anyone ever, and taking their stuff. And then he died. After that, the Chinese Communist Party realized it should also fix China's economy, or what was left of it. So it gradually added some capitalist things back in. And then the Communist Party reformed. See? According to state-run media, the soldiers were just getting Mushu pork delivery.
Communism
so
is
the Communist Party
is basically anarchism.
The protesters at Tiananmen Square, a significant contingent of them actually wanted to bring socialism back. So those tanks were upholding the neoliberal reforms to some extent. So in a way, history is actually the exact opposite of what he's trying to claim it is here.
It's communism. Well, just the economic parts. They kept the heart of communism. Mass surveillance, labor camps, brainwashing, corruption, and of course,
that's only unique to communism.
We can have a superstructure.
Even today in China, you can be tortured to death for doing this, or this, or this. But hey, why worry about that when your business can make money there? Just
that's capitalist logic.
Speaking of no profits,
no argument here.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Following World War II, the Americans and the Soviets split Korea along an arbitrary straight line. But the North and South had some disagreements. They eventually resolved them by turning the straight border into a squiggly border.
Everybody involved in the war, or what?
If it includes everyone involved in the war, then most of those deaths are going to be North Korean and Chinese. Like, let's be real here, the South Koreans probably wanted to go invade the North just as much. Like, obviously, like, I don't care if, like, the North practically started the war. One of the two was going to go at each other's throats eventually.
It's bullshit to say that the North started the war anyways. It's completely irrelevant. A civil war broke out. That's the only real objective way of putting it. Like, to focus on the fact that the North invaded the South first is completely arbitrary. There was already civil war broken out in Jeju Island when the government decimated, they killed 1/10 of the population there because there was already an armed uprising. So Korea was already in a civil war. And then, of course, the Americans completely destroyed all of North Korea to the point where there was no standing buildings left. They couldn't even find anything to bomb anymore.
Yeah, even most of South Korea, too.
And they wonder why North Korea ended up the way how it ended up. Well, take a look at
America.
Americans.
Mr. MacArthur.
A million deaths later. North Korea is officially run by the Workers' Party. But it's actually run by a bizarre cult that surrounds the Kim family, like Kim Jong-il. According to his official biography, he wrote 6 full operas that are better than any in the history of music. Unfortunately, not available on iTunes.
And the American cultists who uphold the cult of the Founding Fathers actually believe that George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. Wow, what a bizarre cult that runs over. As a matter of fact, the cult of personality around the American Founding Fathers is so big that they carved their faces into a 100-foot tall fucking mountain.
I knew
hey, what about the cult of surrounding JFK? When he died, everybody cried. Yeah. But I guess that's not a cult because democracy or whatever.
Yeah.
North Korea is also the second happiest country on Earth, right behind China. That's according to North Korea, which calls itself the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, a country where men can...
You don't think the U.S. says shit like that all the time? They're the upholder of human rights while they violate it for everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not a DPRK supporter, obviously, but, like, it's a little hypocritical to say North Korea is the biggest threat to world peace at the moment.
Yeah. For the right
If they
reasons.
wanted to be a threat to world peace, well, they can't anyway. So yeah. Also, I noticed the next part is
Choose between 10 of...
One sec. I think the next part is going to be on Democratic Kampuchea. Can't we just skip that because it's pretty much they're pretty much a CIA backed op.
Is it? Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, hold on. Before we go
officially
into it,
approved
though,
airstyle.
But
let's just say that Pol Pot was essentially Pol Pot's whole
well, we're
thing.
we're gonna answer some questions about that in another live stream, so we can go
Oh,
further
okay.
into it then. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go then.
Styles. Ah, the world of choice.
Oh, so he just
Khmer
what he just
Rouge.
said. He was talking about the whole you can only choose between 10 different hairstyles meme. There's one of those bits of fake news that gets that gets told about North Korea. Anytime somebody tells a joke in South Korea about North Korea, it gets reported in American news outlets as fact, because we don't have propaganda here. We just report random shit as fact just because it upholds our prejudices. That's because we're the free ones. So yeah, this guy is literally spouting propaganda at this point. Things that he ought to know aren't true, but apparently doesn't care. And yeah, you're right. Democratic Kampuchea, Khmer Rouge. So basically, I don't think Pol Pot was even really a socialist, since he wasn't for the workers. He just wanted everyone out to go fucking work in the rice farms, right? I mean, there's literally
Yeah, I
nothing
mean, like there are a
proletarian
few
about
like
that.
socialist states that like call themselves socialist, even though they
Yeah.
just kind of use it as a banner, if anything.
Yeah.
They weren't actually really socialist, like Cambodia or Ethiopia.
Yeah. Like Vietnam supported them in the beginning, but then at the end they were like, no.
Vietnam
We're
went to
taking you
war
out,
with the
buddy.
Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
After
While
America
the
backed them.
CIA and the
Yeah,
US
after
was-
America destroyed the whole country, Vietnam was able to go to war with the Khmer Rouge and defeat them.
Next in our brief history, the Khmer Rouge. Not a film by
Of course,
Baz
they like
Luhrmann.
telling you about Khmer Rouge.
The Khmer Rouge was the communist regime that carried
CIA
out
backed.
in the 1970s. It did not have any good songs.
See, that was
Pol
a
Pot,
ridiculous video.
This
Yeah,
Pol Pot
Yeah.
is the guy who ran the Khmer Rouge, and he was a huge
He was
fanboy
more concerned
of
about
Mao
making fun
Zedong.
of basic,
Oh my
just mostly
God.
making fun of than actually telling anything.
I
It was
just
kind
want
of
to
more
say,
just
I
it
love
seemed like a
your
whole
Great
joke.
Leap Forward.
Is what it was, just a poking fun at
It was killer.
you know
And
communists
Pol
or
Pot
something
followed
for whatever
Mao
reason.
Example. In just 4 years, his regime killed 2 million people. That's a quarter of Cambodia's population. He especially targeted people who
Pause.
wore glasses, spoke a foreign
Pause for a
language.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of those points have anything to do with communism. It just has to do with the fact that he was an asshole. And remember, this guy, alongside the America and China that were forming a détente, because any Maoist will know that China, towards the end of its actual communist years, kind of fucked up by doing a détente with America,
Yeah.
or pretty much approving all of this. It was supposed to be some sort of diversion in Southeast Asia from Soviet interests. And
Yeah.
any of this, America has blood on its hands too. So yeah. And a lot of communists, upon doing some research on Pol Pot, I don't know how true this is, but apparently Pol Pot, himself never even claimed to be communist, was an opportunist. I don't know. If he did claim to be one, well, it's ironic, because then America backed the worst one they could.
Yeah.
Also, I've also read
Or
that Pol
smiled
Pot
too
himself
much.
never read Marx.
Wow, he sounds like a
Yeah. Could be. I don't know.
psychopathic high school bully. Did he steal their lunch money too?
Yeah. He was bad. We get it.
Yeah, probably. Luckily for the remaining 3/4 of Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge government was toppled after just 4 years.
At least he
Oh, by
acknowledged
who?
Cambodia
that.
was invaded by the next country on our list.
Oh, okay. He admits that at least.
Communist Vietnam, optimistically called the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. It was formed by the communist revolutionary
right
Ho
to-
Chi Minh in 1945. After nearly a decade of war, he and his army finally defeated the French stole their baguettes, and made some amazing sandwiches.
Okay, that's a good.
Stolen.
Ho
The
Chi Minh
French stole
doesn't
their
get
food.
nearly enough credit for his accomplishments. In particular,
expropriated
he's
their
responsible for the
baguettes.
deaths of about 2 million Vietnamese.
Wait.
Meanwhile,
Did he
the
just
U.S.
count-
decided that it
can you
had
pause
so
the
much
video for a
fun in the
moment?
Korean War.
Yeah.
Pause. Yeah.
Did he just count the people killed in the Vietnamese in the war between Vietnam and America as deaths by Ho Chi Minh?
Ho Chi Minh wasn't even around for most of that.
Did he seriously just say Ho Chi Minh killed?
I think he was referring to the first Indochina War.
Yeah, okay.
And, like Vietnam, like
That's still
like here's the thing about Vietnam. It got occupied by the Japanese, the French, the Americans. China,
it was a
China
real
wanted to occupy it
clusterfuck.
later on, and then Pol Pot was trying to kill the ethnic Vietnamese. Like, I don't know. If you look at any of these conflicts, it's pretty hard to make the communist Vietnamese look anything besides like a good guy in these.
Yeah.
War. Vietnam. But in a surprise twist, the communist North eventually conquered the South. It was a horrible tragedy, but it did provide an iconic scene for Miss Saigon. Next up, Laos. Never mind, we don't have time for Laos. Moving along. Cuba. Cuba, you've got some explaining to do.
Yeah, I love Lucy.
In 1959, the U.S. government initially supported the coup by Fidel Castro and the guy from the T-shirt.
Good.
But like a bad date, the U.S. soon realized it should not have swiped right on Castro. So the U.S. tried to overthrow him and failed. Eventually, the CIA gave up. Just kidding. They tried to assassinate Castro like 600 times.
At different times, they attempted to poison Castro's milkshakes, his face cream, and his handkerchief. They even hatched a plan to make his beard fall out so people wouldn't take him seriously.
Really? The beard? That's
fuck?
low, even for the CIA. Oh, and there was that time when the Soviets tried to install nuclear missiles in Cuba, and the world almost ended. It didn't, but the premise made an iconic scene for Planet of the
Yeah, because the U.S. had nukes pointed towards the Soviet Union in Turkey and Italy, and then later in South Korea.
The U.S. can do no wrong. It is a
Yes.
God-blessed land.
Over the last 60-plus years, Cuba has not been particularly kind to its own citizens.
Well,
But
to
somehow, this
dissidents.
T-shirt of a mass-murdering communist
Oz.
is still super popular.
Yeah, the whole. Yeah, for starters, if Cuba wasn't kind to its citizens, then I can only imagine then what the Batista regime was doing.
Yeah, really.
Under there, it was really underdeveloped. The mafia, the fucking mafia, was going around running everything. White tourists thought they were kings there, and, well, most of the population was having it pretty shitty. No wonder they welcomed Castro and all that.
Yeah, what
And
he
not to
means
mention,
is,
like, any attempts for, like, the Americans to introduce democracy in Cuba, it'll probably go back to the Castro years, much like how Russia completely stagnated in the 90s.
what it means is they're not too kind to dissidents and the rich, the bourgeoisie,
Yeah.
and those who collaborate
Yeah.
with them. To the
But I will
actual
say-
average poor citizen, they're a lot better off.
Yeah, I will say this though, like to any comrades watching this, like just don't go around parading with a Chase shirt. That's actually a little disrespectful to him, unless it's a Chase shirt that's made actually in Cuba.
Yeah.
Because well, I know a family member got me one from Cuba, and like I don't wear it outside, but like at least they can't use if you hate capitalism, why do you have the capitalist made shirt and all that? But yeah, no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
But yeah, I only wear authentic Cuban Chase swag. Personally.
there was a
popular.
there's a great lecture by Michael Parenti on Cuba.
Oh yeah.
Essentially, he was able to talk to a guy from Cuba in the mountains in a rural area of Cuba, and he asks if he likes Fidel Castro, and the Cuban man says, yes, with all my heart,
It's
because
always hard.
he is more free now. He points to a clinic on top of the hill, and he says, you see that? before Fidel Castro came, that was not there. We had to walk 2 miles to the clinic in town.
Yeah.
And it was even longer than that. It took a whole 2 days because we had to cross around the lands of the plantation owners. If they caught us in their lands, they'll shoot us.
Buy it now on Amazon.com. Ironically, it's not free. Speaking of Che Guevara in Latin America, forget it. And now, today. At this point, communist governments have mostly gone the way of the dinosaurs. But, like dinosaurs, there are people today who find them immensely fascinating. All over the world, there are registered communist parties. You'll meet people who say things like, well, communism is great, man. It's just never been done right before. If we could just do it without killing 100 million people, it'd
Typical anti-communists, they go after like the easiest, most brain-dead argument that they've ever come across. Like, it just wasn't tried by the right guys before. Yeah, if only we had better people in, then everyone's thing would be fine. Yeah, obviously that's not the case.
Yeah,
he's trying to be like Jon Stewart, but not doing it.
Yeah, here's the funny thing: the world has not ever experienced communism, but like I know it might be a tired argument, but it really hasn't. When the end goal of communism is a classless, stateless society where the workers control the means of production, money and no borders. Sorry, no money and no borders. That hasn't ever historically happened. Now, I will say that socialism has been tried before, and a lot of these socialist attempts have failed. But you know, it's due to counter-revolution and deliberate attempts by the bourgeoisie to get rid of those communist
nothing
attempts.
with the ideology itself. It's just mostly from outside forces.
And not to mention, capitalism technically fails all the time. Like, it's not that successful in the third world, which is in constant fluctuation and stagnation. The first world is going through like a whole crisis right now because opportunities for newer generations have gone through the floor. That's why people are being turned on to communism now, because clearly a lot of people are feeling the capitalist system is failing.
Yeah, there's like a depression every 7 to 10 years. Even in the initial phases of capitalism, when like during the Industrial Revolution, it was like in the United States there was a depression every like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah,
that's really
one was
frequent.
in, like what, 1860s or 1880s or something, and it was just every 20 years after that.
And one point on the 100 million number, even many liberal historians say the 100 million number is not accurate at all.
Well, it's the highest possible estimate that you can make. So it's like taking about a dozen questions and answering them all, you know, in the least favorable possible way. So it's the height of dishonesty to make that claim. Yeah.
Yeah. Also counting in the deaths from wars and all that.
Projected birth rate deficit as actual deaths.
That too. Also, and one more little thing. How many deaths are there from capitalism in about 10 years?
About 100 million.
That's actually what
Probably
I was about to say.
over that, honestly.
Maybe a bit over that, just from preventable shit like not getting clean water.
Or getting the right medicine.
Unnecessary wars in the Middle East and Africa. Yes, we're in Africa now too. Again,
it's been about 250 million since the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, not having any access to healthcare, not having access to food not having access to.
Let's finish this up.
Yeah.
Totally awesome. Which is why, to celebrate the aforementioned 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, China Uncensored will be making a special series of videos taking a look back at all the awesome memories we have of communism. So, will communism rise like a phoenix?
Well, I guess I know what we're doing for the next week.
Heap of history? And if it does, how will the world respond? I have one idea.
Good idea.
Thanks for watching this
that's their response.
Brief history of the Communist Party. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.
The fuck kind of history was that?
Yeah, that was pop culture history is what it was really. Mostly just used like fucking movie clips and fucking like ugh.
Hi,
Just a
welcome to
bunch of
China
ridiculous
Uncensored. I'm
shit.
your host, Chris Chappell.